Alright, our orange board is dry, and one of the tips I want to give you on these boards like this, when you have a board that you can prep both sides of, this is the Anyway tray board or surface. When you have a surface like this, you want to go ahead and seal both sides. So if you, one of the things that I like to do is go ahead and stain my wood and stain it on both sides, stain the edges and everything like that. Then if I want a stained surface, then I can have a stained surface. If I want it's sealed and it's stained. Then if I don't want a stained surface, you can just paint right over the top of it. So then that leaves open the stain option for me. And so then this one I did not seal. I'm going to want to seal it so that I don't have warp. That's what we want to avoid, is get any warping wood. And you want to lay these things flat. You don't want to store them, you know, leaning or having things lean against them. Okay, so this is rough, and we don't want our leather to be rough like wood, so we'll use our sanding disc. And noisily sand that. A lot of people say to sand in the grain of the wood. I don't know that that matters unless you're doing something where the grain can be seen. Okay, these little oval things right here, they're called footballs. That's where they've patched that wood. And they're fine. If you need to, you can use some wood filler on them. Whew, dusty, dusty. Okay, you're going to dust everything off, and you're going to get out your rubbing alcohol. So what we can do, a lot of times you have a need to have some medium out, and the bottles that have the little pop tops on them are fantastic. However, if you have 10 of these going in your kit, then the weight can start building up, and maybe you're traveling and only need a little bit of stuff. These are the mini misters from our website, and they can be filled. I actually have this one, and I did a test to see. This is our brush cleaner. So it's the Winsor Newton Brush Cleaner and Restore, but some kinds of plastics this does not like. So I did a test to see if it would still work in this mini mister, and it seems to be just fine. So you can fill it with brush cleaner, squirt a little on your palette, clean your brush right there. I've got water for the water drop video. I've got extenders so that when you need just a little bit of water, this doesn't splay out, it just delivers a nice healthy dollop. Okay, and then this one is our alcohol, and it's thinner, so it will actually distribute. Now what I find, the reason I have rubbing alcohol in this is because as I'm going to be doing this technique, I need to be spattering with alcohol. This alcohol comes in a giant jar. This lid always leaks after you open it, and a good way to do this is to pour it into this jar lid, oops, and spill it. As you can see, if you're not very graceful, then it does spill. And it also, for some reason, these jars don't pour very well. So I find them extraordinarily messy. Then if you have it into this jar lid, that's this jar lid, and I dump this over onto stuff, alcohol is very damaging, so it can harm things. So it's much better to have it contained in a smaller type container. So on that note, we're going to move onward. I'm going to move my palette over just for a minute. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to dip our moistened sea sponge into our drying time extender, and we are going to wipe it onto our surface. Now water and drying time extender are going to counteract each other just a little bit. Okay, one is going to make the other dry, the water makes the extender dry just a little bit quicker, and I kind of want that. I don't want this stuff to be wet until doomsday. But what I am going to do, I'm going to feel that surface and feel how moist it feels. I'm going to go back over with a second coat because it kind of works into that paint. Nice and even, and dry it back just a little bit. I want it worked into the crevices. I don't want a bunch of crevices where things are going to sit. And then we're going to take washi traditional burnt umber. And with washi, what that means, let me get this on screen. Washi is lots of water. You could use your drying time extender if you wanted to. We're going to use this giant oval, I'm spilling stuff. brush to, I can never think of what these brushes are called. And we are going to apply even traditional burnt umber, nice thin coat, washy, probably 50% water. Okay, you can go the same direction, you can go every old which way. Speed is what you want. If you are in Arizona, make sure that you can handle your drying times. Do not try to do this if you are having the hottest day of the summer, because if you're in a really dry climate or the dry time of year, this will dry really fast. Now we're going to take our same sponge and we are going to do our stippling effect. We want to be able to see it broken up. We can twist some. We want to work quickly. It's a damp sponge. It's okay to have some dark spots and some light spots. Now, quickly, we go into our alcohol, and that is, let me move this over, see if you can see this. I'm just going to dip my brush straight into my puddle of alcohol. I want big chunks of this stuff. I'm going to use a heavy-handled brush, and I am going to put this, flick it onto this surface, this wet surface. This does not work if it's dry. Evenly. This is really a cool effect. I love this. It's almost like magic. And it will eat the holes into the paint. Okay, and let me get you a close-up of that. I'm standing up to do this. See how that's got just splotches and spatters every old which way? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get this dry. You can use a blow dryer, you can heat it, let it do its little eating thing first, and then get your surface dry, and then we continue with layers of this. Okay, my surface is now dry on our crackle. Let's see if I can't make this. I can find a brush. I have a pile of brushes over here in my brush basin. Okay, so we're going to use our sponge again. I've washed my sponge out. I'm going to wipe on my medium. You've got to make sure that your background is totally dry, or you'll wipe off your special effect. Okay, so do make sure that you're completely dry. Okay, moisten the sponge again. It didn't stay wet very, very long. It didn't take a long time to dry. Make sure you've got it completely moistened. Okay, and now we're going to use our washy traditional burnt umber. And we will put another coat of, ooh, look at this. These little guys right here are because my paint was drying on my palette. I would, if I was telling you to do it intelligently, I would tell you to take that off and apply without goobers. However, let's live large. Now, one of the things that's happening is my little football is catching paint, and that's not cool. However, once again, I think by the time we're done with all the texture we're going to have on the background, this is that stipple effect. You could also use a baggie or a piece of like dry cleaner cloth, or even those bags from the grocery store, but use the side without the ink, because the ink comes off on paint. Okay, and then the fun is when we get to spatter on our colors. Okay, use our heavy-handled brush. And you can do it lightly and you can do it heavy for a varying effect. If you get a big bullet you don't like, then you can simply wait and stipple over it a little heavier. Okay. So it's getting a little dark. Okay. Applying level number 3 this time. Nice coat of a medium damp sponge, same thing. You know, really, I don't know if it's necessary to show you everything, but I do think it's interesting to watch it become what it's going to become. Okay, and I think I will get a new pile of traditional burnt umber this time so that I don't have all those ratty little things in there. Very watery. Working quickly, I can't say that enough. I've got a heater going on behind me so that I can dry things, and that means that it is extraordinarily possible that I can have this drying a little bit quicker than I want it to. Okay, so sponging. Oops. You'll stop seeing the sponging as much, but if you don't take it out, then you'll end up with lines on it. Now's when we might want to strategically start focusing a little bit on where we're dropping, and I'm out of alcohol. You don't want circles on top of circles. We want to, you know, start thinking about where we're putting things. If we have a good dark spot, maybe we want more of our circles over in that area. We just layer it until we like it, is the key to this. Okay, we'll let that dry. Okay, now my surface is still a little bit warm. It's later in the day now, so things are drying a little bit quicker. My surface is still a little warm, and what that means is that my paint could dry a little bit quicker. These are some of the variables you need to know about. One thing I want to say about this DecoArt drying time extender, it's not slimy like those other extenders you get, the ones that are real liquidy. I like that. It's got a little bit of a kind of a creamy base to it, and it just acts a little bit more friendly. Okay, so we'll get our paint out and get that hair off of there. This is our fourth coat. It's kind of boring, I know, but you can fast forward through it. Skip chapters, skip to the end. Don't we miss VHS because you could just use that little fast forward button. Now I could apply a heavier application of this paint if I wanted to move quicker, but then I don't think you get the depth. So I don't necessarily care if I'm moving so fast because I do want the depth. And if I'm afraid that I'm drying, I could start blotting at the same time as I am applying the paint. Pardon me. I stopped and had lunch, and now my throat is crackly. Okay. Sponging to get rid of those lines. Let's see what happens if we apply a little bit of saran wrap on this if I have drying time available. Twisting as you're sponging is a very good idea. It diffuses things and makes it just a little bit, I don't know, a little bit softer look. So we'll get out a piece of plastic wrap. While it's still wet, you just lay the plastic wrap over the top and wrinkles and everything, and peel off, and you get a slightly different effect. The wetter this is, the better it works. And then spatter again. Okay, so we're going to go with our next layer. This is definitely something that if you're doing several projects, it's nice to be able to layer them and have them be drying in different stages, or if I can give gifts, you know, things like that. Okay, this time we're going to add a little twist to this. We are going to do a little bit of extra layering because we're getting close to the end. Oops. Okay, so then we're going to get our big jumbo brush. Add on our stuff. This time we're going to add spattering with the brown. And we might even layer this in different, almost chunkier sections. Okay, we could start with our plastic wrap, which left me. Let's see. And see, oh yeah, that's kind of interesting. Now see, you got to be careful because it'll pull on things from the dried up other layer. So you want to definitely use your plastic wrap that's been fresh. You can stipple with plastic wrap as well. Trying to decide if I want any extra texture with my sea sponge. I don't think so. Maybe take off a little bit of extra someplace. I'm going to get a different piece. And someplace I have my spattering brush. Back into our alcohol. And where we've got it heavier, we might want to go heavier alcohol. And now we can also go into our thin paint and spatter with our brown. I think we may need one more wash of this. Okay. It's getting kind of cool looking. Let that dry. And our last coat of our finish. Now I think what I want to do is I want to vary this, and I want to have maybe just a little bit of, maybe I could go just a little bit darker. Let's think about that for a second. Okay, if you use just water, it evaporates right away, so you definitely have to make sure you have enough medium to keep it wet. Okay, I'll try it with just this last coat of this. We could also just do it heavier around the edges and antique as we go almost. We could leave lighter in the middle. Try that just a little bit and try antiquing it just by exclusion. And maybe back into, whoops, hello, got something on my sponge. No, I like the saran wrap at this point. The beauty about knowing about different kinds of equipment or tools is that then you can choose which one works best. Okay. Spatter brush. And I think we are going to call this a done deal. And maybe we'll do one more fine coat on the outside of our spatter. As we get ready to prepare our tray, what I love about this anyway tray is that it is reversible, so I can paint something else on the back. But I wanted to show you a couple of ways that this is how I would lay out a pattern like this. Almost everything except the grapes were done on the computer. So, and if you like lettering and things like that, then the How to Paint Lettering will show you how to do that exactly, all the steps. How to get beautiful lettering and yada yada, but we'll touch on it today because this is a lettering project. Anyway, when I'm getting ready to put a pattern on like this, first thing I do is I get out my big tracing paper so that it's big enough. I don't want to tape a bunch of things together and piece it because it's just not as nice to lay out a pattern on. I lay my piece on top and then I trace the size and shape of my board. Okay, then I have printed out my pattern on the big paper. Okay, and I'm going to lay it under here. Now, how do I tell where exactly this is going to be centered and where straight is, right? You've got a little bit of a problem with that. So what we're going to do is we are going to fold it in half. Okay. Get it lined up. Okay. Fold it in half, and then we fold it in half again. Make sure that it lines up. Never just line up one spot. Make sure you're lined up all the way across. Crease it. And maybe I want one more line just so that I have a couple of straight places. Okay, I'm going to go where my bottom of my words are. And you want to make sure the sides of your paper line up. And then that will give me the center of the piece. Okay, now I can decide, if I want to, I can decide to make the center of the oval be the center of the piece. I mean, that is a decision that you can make, should you want to. So I'll take a look at it. What I like about this yellow tracing paper is it's extremely flexible. I can make a lot of decisions if they see how clear that is. It's actually an educational tool to lay like an amber color paper like this over print to be able to read it a little bit better. Okay, so that is me centered with all the words. And I think that's probably going to be the best choice because I'm going to tape a border on this. So I think that is exactly where I'm going to do. So now what I'll do is I'll get it centered, get it squared, and then I will trace my pattern. Okay, so I've got my pattern on here, and now what I need to tell you is maybe I folded everything and I laid everything out okay, and now I want to check for square. Like this line is really messy, but I've got some tricks that we're going to go through. I want to make sure that my line is straight. Okay, it looks okay from there. This is a flexible T-square, and I've got layers of tape on the back of it. And so this side looks a little bit downhilly. Downhilly is an industry term. So I'm going to use my yellow monster. I'm going to straighten him out. Okay, now I'm going to check that my letters are straight. Okay, and they're good. When you trace things, things can tend to look just a little bit messy. These guys look like they go uphill a little, so I'm going to bring them down. Not all of them do, so I don't know if I got something wonky on my pattern or what. But when the bottoms aren't going to touch all the same places, then you've got a problem. So just that little bit. Now these guys all look pretty good. And check the dry red wine. Now what I wanted to share with you is, okay, that looks good, is if you, get you in a little bit closer, if you say want to have a different pattern than this, maybe you don't like Chianti, or maybe somebody is a Merlot lover or something like that, you can go into your computer and you can just change these letterings. That's why I think it's so important for me to share with you some of these layout steps, because then you're going to want to put the lettering on that you want maybe. Okay, so any of these, you could put, you know, your family name. You could do a lot of different things. So don't be afraid of changing things and personalizing. One of the tips that I forgot to share with you is make sure when you do a special background like this that you spray it with a couple coats of varnish, a matte varnish. That way you can, if you mess up something, because this is very difficult to patch. So if you mess something up, then you'll be able to erase onto your surface and stuff. To do your lettering, you're either going to need a brand new crispy wonderful round or a brand new crispy wonderful flat. You need good edges on your, so that your letters, looking around for a brush over here, you need good crisp lines, and if you have a fluffy, out of control brush, then it will not work. Okay, so I'm going to start with round, I think. Okay, what size? That's the question. You know, it's going to need to be something that you're comfortable with. Okay, you can get your brush wet and have just a touch of water. I mean, just really only a touch. All right, and keeping your brush upright, getting your glasses on your face so you can see what you're going to do with all these letters is you're just going to base them. So if I was basing this, what I would do is do a little outline at the top. Don't worry about extra chalk lines, because what we'll do is and then I would outline the edges. And outlining, just like when we used to color when we were kids, the outlining will kind of keep the edges nicer. Okay. Try to line straighter than you traced your pattern on. Okay, then flatten your brush. What that means is you flatten your brush, which will make it splay out into your paint, and base the letters. This is going to be very repetitive, so I'm going to go off camera and base all my letters. If I have something to say, I'll come back in, but basically it's just, you know, kind of lettering tedious. You just got to get them all the right color, and the fun happens when we get to decorate them. You want to make sure that if your tracing wasn't straight, like my eye looks like it's a little cockeyed there, tilted to the edge, then what I'll do with that is I'll lay my ruler back over and I will straighten it up by altering one edge or the other. One of the helpful hints, and this won't work up here with these letters having all kind of wonky little tops and bottoms, but these letters down here, these, pardon me, they stop and start all at the same thing, pardon me, because of the kind of font. There's no weird bottoms, it just ends abruptly at the top and the bottom. In order to make that cleaner, I'm going to get out my fancy blue tape here, and I'm going to put it at the base of those letters, right at the base of the ones with the flats. Okay, I'm going to use my T-square, if I can find it, make sure that my tape is straight. Okay, and slide that up, yep, okay. And we'll do the same thing at the top. Then I'll be able to just base over tops and not be so worried about those ends being perfectly flat. Okay, make sure we're square. And see, we're not quite square, are we? Okay, so what I'm going to do is grow my letters down here at the ends. Okay. See how many times I've checked the squareness of this. I folded the paper, I traced the outline. You know, I've done like 12 steps to make everything square and straight, and I still end up off a little. So it's really important when you're doing lettering to check, 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 check. Pinch that down, and then you'll remove that. Another reason to be protecting your surface so that it doesn't pull your paint up. Anyway, and so then as soon as you get your letters done, 2 coats probably, then you can take that off. Well, I have gotten my lettering done. It took about an hour or so, not too long. But now I'm getting ready to do this oval. And ovals, I think ovals are one of the meanest, nastiest things in the world to paint because they are. I drew this using the Microsoft Word program so that it was a good shaped, even oval. But now I want to paint it, and I can never make an oval turn out right. So I've got some green stretchy tape, and I've got the skinny stuff because this stuff will bend the tightest, and this is a pretty tight bend. So I'm going to we want to leave enough room for paint. So as I stretch, keep that even with the line. Then what I can do is you just pull the tape, whoops, and pull it as you tape it down. I'm just looking at evenness right now. Okay, you can lift it back up and reapply it. Okay, keep it even with the stuff. Work in shorter sections of tape versus longer sections of tape because you can lift them back up and correct them a little bit. And then what you'll do is you'll tape on the other side of that oval. And I know this seems like a little bit of work, but it's way better than trying to patch this background and make it into something that, got you on camera here. So you pull as you tape. Anyway, it's way easier than trying to patch the background, which would just be a nightmare. Okay, and if I don't like how that looks, I'll pull it back out. This second tape should go right on that line. This tape works fantastic if you have a line to follow. If you don't have a line to follow, it's a little bit trickier. Okay, so I get that, and you just bend that in. Okay. And so you're looking for an even space and a nice graduation of your space. Finish taping, and I'll show you what to do with it. And I've got it all pressed down really nice and tight. You use your thumbnail, and it's only the inside lines that you need to worry about. But one thing you don't want to do is you don't want your paint to seep under. You don't want to use paint with a lot of liquid in it. Normally, what I would do is I would use, now what you could do to keep this from bleeding, because you don't want to patch the background. Let me get a little tool here. You can get some varnish out, and you can put a coat of varnish under your piece, on your tape before you put your paint there. And the varnish, the clear varnish, will leak under and seal those edges of the tape. Normally you would do your background color, but our background color is all modeled and 15 layers and stuff, so get some varnish on there. Okay, and then we'll allow that to dry, and as soon as that's dry, then we will put on our coat of paint. Okay. Alright, now we're also going to tape this line right here, so I'll use wider tape. Normally I would use let me get this stuff out of there. Normally I would use wide tape to do lines like this, but what's going to happen is, see, I want to make sure that, normally I would use normally I'd use a varnish, a makeup applicator to put the paint on, but because this tape needed to be so tiny that it would wrap around those corners. I can't use a makeup applicator on this because of how skinny it is. So what I have to do, do it the old-fashioned way or a different way. Get that out of the way. Not too thick. Okay. Now I also don't want to take my green tape off. Trying to multitask, and maybe I'm just pushing it just a little too far, because if I rip that off, I'll be very sorry. I'll have to be very careful. Well, apparently I am all out of makeup applicators, so I'm going to just take my paint and do it. Okay, so we'll just put our paint down. Okay, and we pull the tape off. See, it's lifting. Okay, so now you get to see what not to do, right? Don't be in a hurry. Stick it back down. Stick it back down nice and straight, even. Okay, so I'm going to get that color on our oval. I need some fresh paint. Will this be perfectly awesome? Not if I do it, because I get very impatient. But it'll be much better than if I tried to hand line it. That is, oof. I've seen more artwork screwed up because people don't take the time, to use a cool tool like some tape that tapes in circles. Okay, just get on there, try not to brush it on the outside of your piece. 2 coats. Okay, then peeling your tape off. You want to peel your tape off as soon as you can. Okay, peel it nice and sharply back. We've got that. I had my varnish drying for quite a long time, so I see that I have a little bit of a chipped edge. This right here, what happens is I had a thick layer, and then the tape, as it comes, if you pull straight up, the tape will pull your layers off, so you've got to pull it back on itself. Oh, that would be helpful if you could see, huh? Okay, so see here, I had a little bit of a chipped edge right here, okay, and that's because the tape, as I pulled straight up, the varnish was this extra layer, and so it pulled up that layer. You've got to pull the tape back on itself to be able to cut the edge of the tape and of the varnish and the paint. Otherwise it'll lift the edges and it'll chunk it off, and so I'm pulling it back on and away. Okay, so you don't want to let it dry too long, the tape on there. One little spit takes off that paint I just smudged. Okay, and then what I'll need to do, and you won't need to because you're watching me screw it up, is I will need to take my round brush and on these places where I chipped, then I'll just go in and I'll repair them. Anything that you see that's a little bit, you know, wonky or whatever from taping, just go through and just split the difference. And you will love using that tape. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a chip off here. Oops, no paint. Alright, as soon as I erase these lines, we'll see what we got. Alright, next, I'm going to want to get all of these lines off of here because I can't tell what's straight and what needs more paint or whatever like that. So, use your nice eraser that won't dig through your paint and just clean up all your letters. Don't do this and wiggle the table that you're sitting at if you're sitting there with a bunch of people, because then they'll get very irritated with you. Okay. I like this eraser because this eraser has a nice, it's a very firm eraser, it's not wiggly, and it's got these nice little sharp edges and an angle, and so it erases next to these chisels of the letters really nicely. It's called a wave eraser. Okay, we are going to use antique gold in our round brush, and we're going to line on the left side of the letters. And take your time with this, you don't want to hurry and make mistakes and stuff like that. Okay, a Q-tip makes a remarkable cleanup. When you have little mistakes. Okay, so when you get to something like the S's, then you don't bring it all the way in. Okay, as it starts turning, then you pop it up there. And we're going to highlight that with moon yellow. can do that a little bit skinnier. And then if you need to, a little bit of the buttermilk. And for that you'll switch to a liner brush and just do it right, chiseling right on the edge. I can find my liner brush. Okay, and that's going to be just right there. Whoops. Welcome to it. Going straight off the edge of the world. Pull your lines towards you for the most control. Breathe out as you line. The letters, let's go a little bit wider here. The letters here are going to get actually highlighted up through the middle of them. So these letters up here were all highlighted to one side. And these letters are going to get highlighted in the middle, kind of in a dry brush fashion. So what you're going to do is you're going to get dry, scratchy paint in your brush. Let me show you how to do that. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull, I've got a round brush, you're going to pull just really dry paint so that it just makes a nice even amount of paint in there. You're not going to get this, those of you who have taken classes with me, because this is a small project, you're not going to get it as much as the large, like a piece of fruit would have a whole bunch of paint built up in your brush and stuff like that. Oops, I've got rolling brushes happening here. Okay, and then you always want to flick on a paper towel, and then you're going to do like dry, scratchy paint through the upper middle. Reload as you need to. And then it'll be on both sides. Remember that paper towel, it's important. So it's all the way up through the middle. And then you're going to highlight smaller and smaller. So you won't go as high the next layers of paint. Okay, then dirty brush, you're going to go into the moon yellow, and that will be a little bit less, and then dirty brush into the buttermilk. Okay, and then that will give you a nice bright through the middle. We're also going to need, what you want to be careful with, here's what I want you to know. I am doing what I'm doing. Let's get you on the camera. Alright, so I've got these letters highlighted and these letters highlighted. What I want to be a little bit careful of is that I keep a little bit of a balance. So if these letters look way brighter than these letters, then I either need to beef these up or I need to tone these guys down. So do make sure that you're watching how your balance on your piece is. The next thing that we get to do is we get to highlight this line. Now this can be a little tricky because if you're highlighting the line and you taped it before, then you know you're going to need to tape it again. So what we're going to do is we're going to tape it again. Except this time we're just going to dry brush. People laugh at me when I tell them I have an entire drawer. I have one of those tall tower, small rolling carts that Rubbermaid puts out, and I've got one whole drawer dedicated just to tape. You know, you've got your Scotch tape and your blue tape and your wide tape and your skinny tape and your stretchy tape, but it's important stuff. This is good tools. Okay, so we've got that down, and I'm not going to worry about bleeding under because my brush is dry, so I'm just going to run that right along the top of that. Thing is to keep it hugged up next to that blue tape. Tape will kind of be your guide. Go from side to side, you'll get a better And if you think you're going to need it, you can go a little bit brighter. Don't get it too bright. It's just a line. But I'm repeating that color just to make sure I get a good coat on there. And maybe a little moon yellow. Skinnier. Okay, there we go. Now we don't have to worry about making the top of that just be all perfect and stuff. So we're going to do kind of a skip shading, a skip highlight on our circle. So I'm going to do around this edge. Very dry brush. This isn't a line, this is dry brush. Okay, so just don't worry about doing it exact. And then over here, just go ahead and skip a space. Don't do it everywhere. Go over to the middle. Keep myself on camera. Go over to the middle, skipping a space here. Oops. Skip it over a little bit more. And then you just repeat the highlights to brighten it up as much as you need to. Alright, time to paint some grapes. We're going to use our 3 colors of paint. And make sure you've got a nice float. Alright, and so what we're going to do is just basically kind of chisel into these leaf edges. We're not base coating anything. And just kind of almost do all the left sides. Days when I paint, I don't do so good with my rights and my lefts. I'm certain that has. Okay, now on this side I'm going to switch and go over to the bottom sides, or the right sides. And then we want to just, oops, gosh, if we get you frickin' on camera. Okay, on the grapes, I'm going to go around, do little C strokes. Okay. Okay, if you're missing a hole, stuff a little grape in there. Okay, when it starts getting dry and draggy, that's the time to start refreshing your water. Okay, now I don't want to go any further with this until I take off these lines. So I'm going to allow it to dry, and then we'll take off the lines. So in the meantime, we'll start doing drop shadows. And we're going to do all of the right edges on the drop shadows. Drop shadow is just going to be a nice, even, wide line off the edge. This is your opportunity to clean up any edge that's on the right side. So this is a really great thing when you're lettering. Okay. Okay, and then just do all of those like that. On the lower letters, we're going to shake it up and we're going to do all the left sides. Okay, so that is going to look like so. Okay, and that just, it deepens the letters and it gives them some substance. That's what's nice about drop shadowing. On your letters on top, the other place that you want to go ahead and do the drop shadow is underneath each letter. It's your great opportunity to clean everything up, even out the lines. The bottom and the tops of things are one of the hardest to do with lettering. Okay, it's so much fun. It's so rewarding to watch these letters just come to life. That really just helps so much. As we get going here, we also want to do a line to the bottom of our letters. Now, I can't tape it yet because these are still wet and I will make a bloody mess. So I won't. I'll learn from my earlier mistake and I won't do that, but I will erase my grapes. You can't tell what you got unless you erase those lines, so we gotta erase. Alright, while I'm waiting for my stuff to dry, then we'll put our next layer up on our grapes. So that'll be going into the antique gold, and that'll just be highlighting just a little bit more. Oops, and that's too much. Okay, I gotta make a skinnier float. Alright, a little bit narrower. Okay, just get them beefed up. Remember, those ones that are behind things are going to be a little bit less bright because they're behind stuff. Let's get just a little bit tucked in. A little choppy is okay. This tray is, I have to say, I'm going to talk about this tray in just a little bit when we get finished. Maybe we'll float just a center vein in here instead of lining it. We're doing a lot of lining today. I think we can get by with that. Go into the next color, very, very, very minimal. And tip your brush and do those little highlights out there. And with the final, it's just going to almost be a dot. Okay, now we don't want it to get away from us, so this highlight up here might just be, I think I skipped the moon yellow. Not everywhere. Okay, and as I'm spewing things, okay, so we're dry. Take my tape and make a nice even line to make our drop shadow line underneath. Alright, and we don't want this to get too juicy, we don't want it to get too far away from us. You really can't see because that camera's in front. I think you get the idea, but I'll be done here in a second. Okay, ta-da! Alright. Probably the easiest bunch of grapes you ever painted in your life, huh? Alright, I think we want just a hair of the accent or lining color, highlight color on these lower little letters. Okay, I just don't think they were, so just a little bit in the middles. Oops. If you have too much water sitting in your liner brush, it will release all at one time. You have to be careful of that. Just down the middles, just so that they stand out. Try not to have wispy tails. Stay within the letter of the law. Ha ha ha. Just to help pop them up just a little bit. They were looking a little bit dull. I mean, look at the difference between this and these puppies right over here. If you got too much highlight on this, though, then they would be really electric looking and they wouldn't be quite right. So I'm going to do just a little bit bolder. I really do like that. Yeah, good. And go ahead and do that on all of your letters. Alright, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to shade our oval. And we're going to shade it to, yikes, if I could tell. I've got myself a little list here, and to the inside of our oval, we're going to shade. I'm going to use this Giant #1. This will be one of the most versatile brushes you will ever own in your life. It is an oval glaze brush, It is actually cut like a filbert, so it's rounded, but it's also shaved. See how it comes to that really nice fine point? Okay, so it's real fat up in here, but real pointy here. I actually use this when I'm painting my house to paint like the trim work and stuff. It's just big enough to do it. It fits in my hand. This is actually the wall paint from my studio, and it washes out. You know, it just lasts and lasts. Great varnish brush, fantastic for floating and things like that. It holds a ton of water. You won't go wrong. It's very affordable. You almost can't hurt it. Okay, so I'm going to just float with my filbert brush. So that's just a, you know, a side load and blend on my palette. And now what I want to do is I want to come out here and I want to bring that chisel edge right next to the oval of the oval, yolk, the oval of the oval. Okay. This might be a really good place for Q-tips if you screw up. Nice big gargantuan float. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll wait for that to dry before we walk it out, because of the oval, if we start floating and walking that out right now, it would be a disaster. We'll flip the other side. Okay, so just bring it on its chisel right here. And then I just start laying it down a little bit more and a little bit more. Lift off when I need to. Don't be afraid of turning your piece. Okay, as I put my arm right across that float. Hello, don't do that. It's a good thing I don't have long sleeves, because then that would have been all over my sleeves. And come up to a chisel. And smooth this one out where I had to restart. Okay, then the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to antique these edges. Let's go a little bit wider. And you can do a couple of things with antiquing. I could easily, I could use retarder, but I'm going to use the old one too. And I'll show you what that means, okay? So I'm just going to use this brush. I'm going to come out here to these corners. I'm going to give it my shadow all the way around. Nice and floaty. Can go in and make sure I don't have any lines. Amazing what a difference that already makes, huh? When you antique, it brings the eye into, it's like putting mascara on your eyes. It brings your eye to where the dark is, and it brings your eye in. Okay, make sure you have plenty of paint. What I like about working on a big project like this is as things dry, you can just flip them over. Or not flip them over, but start working on another area. Alright, one of the things that I would like to point out is that this would be a fantastic piece on a TV tray. If you had TV trays, you could paint them all like wine labels, and you could just put like a Chianti and a Merlot and a Chardonnay and all your favorite kinds of wines. You could hang it as art on the wall. It would be an awesome canvas. On the tray, I just love that tray. That's the Anyway tray, so I'll show you that as soon as we get it done. And then let's see, what else do we need to do here? Once we varnish it, then I think what we're going to want to do is wax it. And the reason that we would wax it is because we're going to use it in food. And so you could use it as a serving tray. You could put food right on it with the food-safe wax that we're going to talk about. And it also will repel your water and your food sticks and things like that. So it's just a really good idea to have it as a protection. Okay, the old one too I'm talking about is we're going to use this dry rubbing brush. Put our paint in there, rub it off completely on the paper towel. Not completely, but you know what I mean. a lot of rubbing off. And then we're going to extend our float by brushing this rub on here. Okay, and that just brings it in so it's not so stripy and liney. It's a really good cheater way of bringing out a float. So once you get the chisel edge next to the border, that's what the brush with the float in it is good for. Then you can move to doing this because you can just do a little scumble of color and Bob's your uncle. We can also do this on our edges. Okay, so once we've got that, you know, nice and, you actually could probably do this without having floated it, but I like the edge being done first and then floating it in. Okay. So you can see how that deepened that area compared to that area. It's just a really, gosh, if you have students or yourself that struggles with floating, besides the fact that I recommend my How to Float video, which shows you like a million ways not to float or to do everything but the traditional floating, as well as the traditional floating. Anyway, this is just a great way to help a beginning student or somebody who just doesn't like that technique. It is a really easy way to achieve a really awesome look. Okay, so then more. Just keep adding it to your brush. When you order these brushes, this is the Dome Stencil brush. When you order these brushes, you're going to want to make sure that you order a couple, because once they're wet, they're really thick. Once they're wet, you can't really use them. You've got to use them dry. So you got to make sure you have a couple of them. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a technique, need to change colors, and wait 2 hours for your brush to dry. And I think it may even take longer than that. Okay, so pull that in. Just amazing. All right, how are we liking that? Okay. Seems to me we have a little bit of a darkness imbalance. This is where you start asking yourself, how do you like the balance of colors? You squint at your piece, you know, just kind of look at it through, you know, flip it over, look in a mirror. There's a lot of little tricks you can do to get a good balance. Some of this balance is that this is a lighter area than this is. Not much I can do about that, but I think it adds to the age patina of it. So now I'm going to increase this right here. Okay, now wash that brush out. Watch for hairs. When you're scrubbing with a brush like that, you are going to get hairs. Alright, this is the Anyway tray. What I love about the Anyway tray is any way you flip it, you can have it any way you want it. So it comes like this, with just this, you know, emptiness there. And you drop in the panels. The panels are heavy enough to support everything that you want. So now we have this lovely Tuscan panel, but maybe, oh wait, maybe I want chefs in my kitchen today. So now I can have chefs and change it. You can paint on the back and the front. You can do Christmas, you can do seasons, you could do themes, you can do all kinds of things. Great thing about these panels is they're skinny, they're flat, they're easy to store. You could come up with a framed piece, you could hang them on your wall if you wanted to. So this is our